Right, I'm going to talk about erectile dysfunction. Not talked about enough in any kind of serious and honest way. Trying to think where to start with my journey on it. I've not made any notes. This is all off the cuff. Maybe some heavy editing going on at some point. And of course, it's YouTube, so it can't be too graphic. First time I seriously experienced it, it was, we do get those odd moments if we're drunk or tired or whatever when we're young. But it was in my 30s, and it was a psychological thing. I don't want to come over like a victim, but yeah, I was in an abusive relationship. It actually, but I'll rewind there. I was using condoms, used them before, no bother. But for some reason, it didn't work when in this particular relationship needed to start using them, and it just wouldn't work properly for me. And unfortunately, because of the nature of what that relationship was becoming, I was getting, there was ridicule and various other things involved, which in turn I put a lot of pressure on myself, and I couldn't do it most of the time. And often without a condom didn't work. And even though I could get an erection, was something that hadn't happened to me since I was really first started getting into relationships. By the time I was hard enough, I was ready to finish, which I'd never had this premature ejaculation thing, really. Again, not since I was young and first getting to grips with all that kind of thing, which is really normal. And, I looked into it. I went to the doctors, got blood tests and stuff to see if there was anything wrong with me. There was nothing physically wrong with me at all. Now, that was with a practice nurse, and went to see a GP. She quite funnily said, there's often psychological reasons for this, and we can get counselling, and that's often advised, but nobody really wants to talk about this, do they? So she wrote me a prescription for a thing called Uprima. I'm going to edit this. I just want to check that this is recording, because I don't want to start all this again. So there you go. I might actually leave that in. Anyway, I don't think you can get that drug anymore. I think they stopped it. And that worked. Made me sweat buckets. Absolutely sweating. I mean, really wet. Which isn't really that sexy, is it? No, but it did work. Only lasted for about half an hour, but it was just back to normal. It was great. And again, during that relationship, it was brought up, oh, you've had these tablets, then they wore off, and then you're all floppy again. You couldn't do it properly. And I love during. Again, I don't want to come over a victim, because I let these things happen to me, and I put up with it. Don't like victimhood, but abuse is wrong, and I wouldn't suggest anybody else in a relationship that it's under their control, because everybody has a different reason for staying in a relationship. So, and I've known so many people that have been in relationships like that, mainly women who've put up with awful things, and I wouldn't suggest for 1 minute that you should just walk away, because there's many different reasons, even though they really need to, people need to, but you can get ground down. I digress. I may get back on that subject in another video, but at the moment I'm speaking about erectile dysfunction. So I've been beating around the bush, haven't I? yeah, used that for a bit. Didn't really work. After that relationship ended, the rest of that's another long story, which I won't bore you with. I was fine again after that with other people. Totally fine. So this was when I was in my 30s, fast forward another 10, 15 years, I was experiencing it more. And, I tried different drugs. It's easier by then to actually, buy things online, get an online prescription. Gave Viagra a try, which again, that works. Only lasts about half an hour, 40 minutes again. The headaches were bloody awful, and it wasn't worth it. And it really wasn't worth it. And I wasn't even in a relationship there. I just wanted to try it and see if it would work. Unfortunately, as well, I was kind of in a relationship. It wasn't abusive, but there wasn't the same kind of compatibility there. So, just saying, the little bit of an extra helping hand, which helped a bit. The then Cialis, which was really very expensive, at about, I suppose, up until I think 2017, because it was a drug that was only available under that name, but then it could be cloned and sold more cheaply. And I bought this stuff, and it is called, I need my glasses, been using it for a long time, and I can't say it, Tadalafil. That works so much better, and it lasts a lot longer. Some people call it the weekend drug or something like that, because it actually, carries on working in your system. And you have to be excited for it to work as well. You got to get the doses right and think about what it costs to use. What I will say is some of the side effects can be, for me, there's various different ones. And again, you take any drug, you get medical advice. This is prescription stuff in the UK. And read the stuff, find out about any side effects. For me, dry mouth, heartburn, and sort of mugginess in your head. It feels a bit like if you suffer from hay fever or allergies, you'll know what I mean. It's that kind of feeling. There's different ways of dealing with it when you take it. Ways to mitigate the side effects, which you can take antacids. That'll help a bit with heartburn. Obvious, I know. Don't take it on an empty stomach if it gives you heartburn. That helps a bit. And taking antihistamines, which does seem to help with some of the other, like allergic reaction type, like to pollen or whatever type feeling you get when you use it. And it works. You still need some desire though if you're going to use it. And it's good to look at the dose. It's good to start on a low dose, see how that makes you feel, and see if you need a higher dose. Obviously, the higher dose means that if you do have any side effects from it, then they will be more intense. I'm having a beer. I will be doing another series on cutting down on drinking, but stay tuned for that one. Keep an eye out. Right, but what I would say about try the smaller doses, see if it works. But something you can do to save a bit of money, if it is working for you, is get prescribed a higher dose and cut the tablets up. Right, and that's what I do. I've got this Right, these things, they are, I can't remember how many milligrams that is, 20 milligrams. What I do is I use a tablet cutter. So I only actually take 5 milligrams at a time. I'm sure you've probably seen one of these things before, and I can't find mine. Here it is. One of these things. So what I do, I cut them into quarters. So I get, say, a 5 milligram dose. Yeah, you can cut them down further. You know, to see how it works. It's good to experiment with these things, and it's a good way of taking a much lower dose. Because no matter what a doctor says to you, you need to take something and try it, see how your own body reacts. You know, and I would say always go on the low end, see how it works. And what's the point in taking more than you need if a very small dose helps you achieve and maintain an erection, you know? And if a little bit isn't enough, cut off another bit, have a bit more. That, to me, is just the sensible way of doing it, cheapest way of doing it, and mitigating side effects, you know? You know, one best way to do it, in my opinion. You know, there are a lot of other things that affect it, you know, lifestyle does, smoking, drinking, the wrong kind of diet, general fitness, you know, and your weight. I think blood pressure can affect it as well. You know, this is something I'd like to talk about more because it isn't talked about enough, and it'd be good to hear from anybody else with any kind of tips. You know, this is the first video. You know, can go into a lot more detail, and you know, let's talk about this stuff. If I can talk about it on video, you can talk about it as a faceless person to me if you want to. But you know, we can all help each other. Okay, I don't know where this is going, but until the next time.